employers right now are not necessarily just so black and white on degrees anymore. They're really looking at skills. So, what is the track record of this individual? Does he or she have the skills that we're looking for? Can they make a real impact quickly? And that's really different. But it goes back to that earlier point when you only have kind of an employee for maybe kind of 2 to 5 years, when you bring them in, you got to make sure that they hit the ground running.
Welcome to Agile Talks. I'm Kaine, here always with my colleague and fearless leader, Mr. Mark Batty. How's it going today, Mark?
Over this cold, Sean, I need spring like yesterday. But other than that, doing well.
Awesome. Good stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit about the State of Organizations report from McKinsey. So they just released this report, and the central finding is that 3 tectonic forces are fundamentally shaping how organizations grow, operate, and lead. And McKinsey's clear, these are not temporary fluctuations. These are deep structural transformations, right? The 3 forces are the infusion of AI and automation into workflows, the increasing economic and geopolitical fragmentation, and major workforce shifts driven by changing expectations and technology. What I find most interesting about McKinsey's framing is that these 3 forces are interdependent. They don't operate in isolation. AI could liberate organizations from some of the physical location and geopolitical constraints associated with human workers, but it will raise other dimensions of complexity, including how humans and AI agents will collaborate, right? So, Mark, before we go force by force here, what's your overall reaction to this report?
Yeah, surprisingly, I'm totally aligned with McKinsey on all of the recommendations. Sometimes I think they get a little vanilla on some of the topics that they touch, but this report is spot on, and it basically reiterates what we've been seeing for the last 2 years. So the connection points are clear for us, and I'm excited to dive in and give some examples on how and why they're interesting and how companies can potentially approach some of the challenges moving forward.
All right, I love it. So let's start with force number 1. McKinsey describes this as automation and data analytics being joined by the burgeoning of AI, both the large language models underpinning generative AI and the advent of AI agents that can be inserted directly into company workflows. Collectively, they're calling this a paradigm shift that promises productivity gains, faster speed to market, cost reductions. The prescription: reimagine how work gets done, redefine domains and end-to-end processes, rethink traditional structures, and then test. So, Mark, when you hear paradigm shift, do you think most organizations get it, the magnitude of what's really being described here, or are most leaders treating this just like another productivity tool upgrade?
I think it depends on the organization. I think where we're at with the implementation of AI is, companies that took that first leap they were really focused on tasks. What are the most mundane, repetitive tasks that we could put AI on top of or beside of to start creating some type of efficiencies, to start creating kind of capacity for our team. Where we're at now, though, the big shift that we see is the agents or the models are being deployed for decision making. They're trying to help augment decision in parallel with the workforce. So the biggest question now is, how does your workforce oversee, understand, and manage the output of those agents and not just kind of accept the recommendations blindly? So spending your time in understanding kind of the decisions that are made. But that's the biggest opportunity right now. So it's not just kind of bolt on, how can we get through more emails? It's really subsidizing kind of the decision making and some of those tougher opportunities.
Absolutely. So the report also says that organizations need to seize emerging opportunities and test. What does that actually look like inside of an organization? What makes a good test versus a pilot that just creates noise? What are your thoughts there?
I think this is the biggest opportunity to really understand your workflow and understand how the tool is going to bolt onto your existing process. It's not just about having an amazing model or the most updated model. the secret sauce is really how does it fit into your organization? How does it fit into your process? And how is it being adopted? So that I think is the biggest opportunity for companies to really understand how it's integrated into the daily workflow of things and then supplement it with that change management, that training, and redesigning the process to make the AI agent a plus one.
Yep, yep. Yeah, the agents are going to be everywhere. They're going to be talking to each other. You're going to have to, govern them. So yeah, totally agree. So let's jump into force number two. McKinsey describes this as economic disruptions and geopolitical uncertainty intensifying as the world becomes more fragmented. Their guidance: organizations need to adapt swiftly yet sustainably, cope with increasing complexity, and potentially rethink their location strategies. All right. So that phrase, adapt swiftly yet sustainably, is doing a lot of work in one sentence, right? In your experience, when organizations are navigating real geopolitical or economic disruption, what does the trade-off between speed and sustainability actually look like?
I think we experienced it. And, it's been 5 years, 5+ years since the pandemic. But the way that the supply chains were really created once we started to globalize and get into China and some of the other APAC countries was all about efficiency, right? Just in time. How can I get the most productivity using a global supply chain and get the product here just in time? I think the pandemic challenged a lot of those assumptions. And if you talk to a lot of our clients now, instead of efficiency first, it's way more about resiliency first, right? How confident am I in my supply chain when things go wrong, that there will be few or no interruptions? And how am I putting those pieces on the chessboard to respond to those uncertainties? So whether it's, another pandemic, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's, war, there are so many unknowns right now. So I think many times customers may have had a plan B, but now you see them kind of having plan C, plan D, and being able to implement different choices depending on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And the report also notes that AI could actually liberate organizations from some of the physical location, geopolitical constraints associated with human workers, right? So do you think that's realistic, near-term benefit? Is that a few years away? What do you think?
I think it goes back to the first point is, most of the workforce is inundated with decision making. And if there's any opportunity to allow that worker, allow that organization options, right? Like creative options to at least have a discussion around and to propose, that's interesting. I think too many times we're all drinking from a fire hose. So you come in the morning, everybody has a great plan when they start their day, and then the day wraps up and you actually look what you accomplished during the day. And many times it's little to nothing that was on your to-do list because the world happened. So I think what AI can do in the background or in a collaborative way is support some of that modeling, support some of that decision making to free up teams to actually have those discussions. But I think we are in a place where it's not going to be just kind of one source for a product anymore. You're seeing much more regional takes on stuff. You're seeing way more onshoring across the world. It's not just the United States bringing stuff back in the country. It's Europe as well. So it's happening. And I think to have AI supplement some of those options is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah, so good segue. So let's quickly cover the third force, right? Workforce shifts. So evolving employee expectations, shifting demographics, and new tech-driven working models transforming the workforce. So McKinsey's prescription: transcend traditional structures, redefine leadership, and refocus on performance to navigate ongoing disruption. So when they say organizations need to transcend traditional structures, what do you think they mean? And what does it look like for a leader who has spent their career inside a traditional hierarchy?
Yeah, this is a big one. We've touched on this a couple of times in our discussions and some of the other posts that we've done. to me, this is the the biggest opportunity, and maybe that the opportunity on where to start is, what does your workforce look like? If we reflect and you look at your grandparents, grandparents they would graduate high school. Many of them had just gotten out of the war. Their sole kind of goal or their sole responsibility after returning home was to go find a job, right? And once they found that job, I would guarantee the majority of our grandparents were in that job until they retired. And that was the goal, right? To find a good job with a good living, raise a family, and that's what life looked like. If you look at our parents, some of our parents may have shifted jobs once or twice, but it was not as fluid as it is now. We look at resumes, as we expand our team, and, you see individuals with 4 or 5 different experiences within the first kind of 10 years of their career. And, I even catch myself saying, wow, that's a lot of change really quickly, but it's kind of the new norm. So I think for employers and larger corporations, you really have to get down to, what's important to your workforce. What is going to keep them there? How do you train them, right? So the gestational period of how you train people has to be much, much more condensed and repetitive, because you just don't have the time horizon. And then ultimately, how do you keep them to stay? How do you keep them? What's your purpose? How do you get them to be all in every single day? So that's a big one. And then the other side of that, again, it's shifting, and you're seeing it even a little bit with college admissions. You're seeing a major shift right now from students graduating high school going direct into college, with college admissions being way down. And why is that? I think some of it is because the environment we're in. It's like, well, I'm 18 years old. I want to go to college, but I don't even know what to study to be kind of, that job or the work with that company. And employers right now are not necessarily just so black and white on degrees anymore. They're really looking at skills. So, what is the track record of this individual? Does he or she have the skills that we're looking for? Can they make a real impact quickly? And that's really different. But it goes back to that earlier point, when you only have kind of an employee for maybe kind of 2 to 5 years, when you bring them in, you got to make sure that they hit the ground running.
Yep. No, great point. So where this lands for me, this conversation in McKinsey's core message, 3 forces are interdependent, and their impact is only beginning to unfold, right? Technology will accelerate the reorganization of work and value creation. Economic disruptions will keep redefining global resilience and competitiveness. And workforce shifts will challenge leadership models and talent systems in ways we haven't fully seen, right? So the organizations that navigate this well will be the ones that react to each force, and won't be the ones that react to each force in isolation. They'll be the ones that build the capacity to lead through all 3 simultaneously and continuously, right? So that's all the time we have. Thanks for joining us on Agile Talks. I'm Sean Kaine, always with Mark Batty, and we'll see you next time.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sean.